Hey there, everyone. How's everyone's Halloween prep coming along? I know we are, I don't know, like 4 days out and we are not done yet, but that's okay. Today I want to share instead with you guys the tombstone and crypt that we built last year. So first things first, you need some foam board. You can get this at Home Depot or Lowe's. Get the 4x8 feet boards, but make sure you get like the 2-inch in thickness. You'll also need some 1x3 boards and some wood screws, and you'll also need something to cut the foam. I personally use a foam cutter. You can use whatever cutting tools you have, but I opted for the foam cutter. And they do have, while the one I purchased is out on Amazon, there's plenty of others. Before I went foam shopping, I wanted to be sure how many pieces I would need. So I mapped out the dimensions of each piece of the crypt to the actual size of the foam board. I ended up calculating that this would be 2 pieces of foam board. And then bonus, I ended up, as you can tell from this image, I had some of the bottom part of the foam left, so I used that to make my tombstone. After you have your foam, you can get to measuring all of your pieces so that you can cut, again, with whatever tool you're going to use. The one point I do want to make about using the foam cutter, if you need your measurements to be like exact and perfect, you should cut along the outside edge of your line. We use the actual line. So what the end result of that was, the foam melted a bit when the foam cutter cuts through it. So our dimensions became a little bit less. With this particular scenario with the crypt and the tombstone, it was fine. We didn't need perfection. Most of the pieces lined up exactly. Some of them might have been a little bit short, but literally nobody but us would notice that. After I cut out the pieces for the crypt, as I mentioned earlier, I had some left over, so I cut this tombstone out of it. And the bottom piece is also part of a leftover, and what I ended up doing was eventually cutting into that piece so I could fit the tombstone into it, like so it would slide into it, not just rest on top of it. Then your next step after you cut all your pieces together is paint them. For this, I had the help of my parents. Not that I couldn't have painted it, but my mom is really good at painting, and I really needed some help in the whole dry brush technique because I didn't want to mess it up. After you've gotten your initial coat of gray, or however many coats you're going to do, obviously you need to let them dry. I'd say ours took like an hour or so maybe to dry, at least to get it to a point where we could move on to doing the adding the black, the dry brush, to age it a bit. We also used some browns and some golds to give it a further aged, textured look. Once all of your pieces are painted and dried, then you can assemble with your wood screws. Originally, we were going to use hinges for the top piece, but we didn't like how they looked, so we decided to skip the hinges altogether, and we just rest that top piece of the crypt on it and have the pumpkins on top of it. And voila, we have the finished crypt and the finished tombstone. So the tombstone, I also added some hands that I got from Amazon and some moss, and you can see in the corners here how we added those, like that gold and the browns. So after I got everything put together, I realized I wanted a little bit of oomph, an additional detail between the crypt and the pumpkins. So first I was going to do this moss on top of another foam board, but I wasn't digging the moss, so I ended up just using that foam board and painting it black. After the black paint dried, I was ready to go. So that was it. Just the foam pieces, the black foam board, and the pumpkins were ready to go. So this is the final product of the tombstone out in the yard with the Atmos FX digital decorations and also tombstone trickery. And then finally the pumpkins on top of the crypt. This was the night leading up to Halloween when we put it out in the yard, and some of Halloween night. So I hope you've enjoyed watching, and if you have any questions at all, please just let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.